Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Write a Thesis. I'd like to thank Shoco Wellness for inviting me to present this PowerPoint to you. I do want to acknowledge that writing a thesis is not the easiest thing in the world, and I'm going to do my best to help you. What I need from you is to take some questions, to make some questions as we go along, and at the end, I'll take all your questions and I'll do my best to answer them, because this is not an easy process, but it is one that you can get through. And what's so great about this is that Shoco Wellness is actually providing you with the pertinent information, something I didn't have when I was writing a thesis. So I really hope this helps you all to write your thesis or your research papers now or in the future. All right, let's get started. So in all presentations, we have to have an objective objectives to let you know what we're going to try to achieve today. So the first one is to provide an overview of what is required of a thesis. Have a better understanding of how to structure a thesis and have a better understanding of the writing process. So hopefully we will get through all of this and you will have a great understanding at the end. All right, so we're going to talk about planning, research, and writing a thesis. So first things first, what is a thesis? I know when I was told I had to write a thesis, I didn't know anything. I had no idea. So here we go. So a thesis is an in-depth consideration of a topic or research question. So a research paper or a thesis is a piece of academic writing that seeks to make an argument about a particular topic or answer a particular question. And we will go into this a little bit more as we go along the way, but these are the official definitions of what a thesis is supposed to be. It also presents an original thesis statement, and that's going to be something that you're going to have to develop, maybe by yourself or with your instructor. We will talk about that later on. A research paper always presents a thesis statement, which is the central point of the paper, the central point that the paper will try to make. All right. It also engages with primary and secondary sources. So primary sources are firsthand accounts of events that have occurred during the period of time or several years later, such as correspondence, diaries, memoirs, and personal histories. So this is firsthand stuff. This is not something that somebody summarized. It's, again, firsthand written documents. It could also be verbal, but it has to be firsthand. All right, secondary sources often use generalizations, analysis, interpretation, evaluation, and synthesize primary sources such as textbooks, magazine articles, book reviews, commentaries, encyclopedias. A thesis also contributes something new to the field. So you're going to be asked to develop a thesis question, and it's expected to be something new and hopefully exciting. So a research paper engages with the existing research in your field, and then you've got to contribute something new. All right, so there are 3 stages of the writing process. So the first thing you have to do, of course, is to research your information once you've decided on your thesis question, and then you've got to start planning and getting yourself organized. And of course, you've got to be writing, and there's lots of revision. So let's go into this a little bit more in detail. So research and planning, you've got to decide on a topic or question that fits the scope of your assignment, find and read the relevant sources, then outline the structure of your paper. Writing, write your first draft of the full paper, which will consist of the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So a thesis always has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And then this, with the revision stage, it involves redrafting your paper, correcting errors, and tightening up your assignments. And no, you may have a few revisions. You'll probably at least have more than one for sure. This leads me to just drop a little hint that you're going to need a lot of time to write your thesis. So don't think you can write it in a few days. All right, so here are the basic elements of a thesis. I've got an abstract up there because sometimes an abstract is required, sometimes it's not. It depends on the level you are in your education. So I threw an abstract. Of course, we have to have an introduction. So the introduction, and again, we'll go into this a little more, but the introduction is, of course, going to, so the abstract is a small, concise body of writing that you're going to state. And again, we'll go into this. I'll actually have an abstract for you, but you're going to state your thesis, what this thesis is about, the methods, the conclusions, why you're doing this. So it's going to be really small. Then you're going to have an introduction. So that's going to expand on what your thesis is about. You're going to have a literature review. So I'm not sure if any of you all came to the last workshop, which was how to write a literature review. So a literature review is a lot of research and reading, and you're going to read a lot of peer-reviewed literature, and I'll get into that. And you are going to use that literature to support your findings and what you're going to be writing about. Then you're going to talk about the methodology, which is the methods you use. Then you're going to talk about the results that you found. Then you're going to discuss the results. You're going to give us the conclusions. And last but not least, we need to know where you got all your information from. So we're going to need the references or bibliographies. All right, so let's get into this a little bit more detail. So an abstract. So an abstract is the main purpose of an abstract is to briefly give the reader an overview of why the study was needed, what the purpose of the project was, the research question, the key materials, and methods that were used, the main results, and what conclusions were drawn from this. And again, we're going to go into more detail. And of course, your introduction. I'm sure a lot of you have written an introduction before. So this gives the reader a detailed understanding of what the thesis is about. It should include a brief description of the key current knowledge that exists. So I should have highlighted current. We want current knowledge. We don't want something that's 30 years old unless it is something that changed the way people think about this, about what the area you're writing in. So it has to be something really pivotal that you're going to then build on. So again, you want current knowledge. And it's based on the work, of course, presented in previous literature. And it should also convey why you chose to research your subject area. So before we go on, I want to show you an example of an abstract that I wrote with my husband. This is our abstract of a journal article that we wrote. So what I did was I sort of highlighted it in different colors so you'd have an idea. So red, of course, is the introduction. Then the purple is the research and your research question. The blue area is your purpose. The green is the methods, and the black is the conclusion. So again, let's look at the introduction. So here you're going to tell people, again, it's the abstract, and abstract means it's a little part of the introduction. So you're going to let people know a little bit of what you're writing about. The purple is your question and what research you're looking at. The blue, again, is the purpose. Why are you writing this? The green is the methods. So what methods did you use? So in this case, we use Qualtrics surveys, and we also did interviews with Canadian Trinidadians. And then the black is there's always a conclusion at the end of your abstract. All right. So basic elements of a thesis continued. So the method section. So this describes the actions, how you investigated and researched your paper. It states why your specific processes and techniques were used to identify, collect, and analyze information. Again, you want to try to use a lot of primary sources, and of course, you can also use some secondary, but you want to use a lot more primary sources. Okay, your results. So this is where you report the main findings of your research. This is important to report. It is important to report the results of your study before you start discussing their meanings. So again, the results, it's got to be exactly what you find. You're not going to put in your ideas, what you think it may be, or what you're translating it to be. This is what it is. These are the results. It may not be the results you hope for, but you need to put them in very authentically. It has to be exactly what you found. So be concise and objective in a logical order. You may use tables and graphs to illustrate specific findings, and you can discuss that with your professor, find out exactly what they're looking for, and if it's okay to use tables and graphs. All right, the discussion. So this is where you examine the meaning, importance, and relevance of your results. So it should focus on explaining and evaluating what you found, showing how it relates to your literature review and the research. So this is huge because this is actually you're actually bringing everything together in the discussion. So you can focus your discussion around 4 key elements. So this may help you to organize your discussion. So interpretation. So what do the results mean? So this is when you get to tell us what you think the results mean. The implications. Why do they matter? The limitations. What can't the results tell us? So is there a gap in the results? Like what's missing? So this is very important as well. And then recommendations. What practical actions or scientific studies should follow? So what do you recommend after you've poured through your journal articles and you've poured through books and all your material? You may have found, there's something that I thought I would find that I didn't. So this is a good way. This is where you would put in your recommendation. All right, and of course your conclusion. So the conclusion should begin from the main question that your thesis aimed to address. This is your final chance to show that you've done what you set out to do. So make sure to formulate a clear and concise answer. Do not repeat a list of all the results that you already discussed, but synthesize them into a final takeaway that the reader will remember. The conclusion is an opportunity to remind the reader why you took the approach you did, what you expected to find, and how well the results match your expectations. So again, you're going to start pretty much your conclusion is going to, the first statement is going to talk about your main question, right? Your thesis question. And then you're going to go through, you're going to summarize everything you've written about. And by this time, you're going to be so familiar with this, this will be easy to do, right? And then you're going to give us the conclusion of your conclusion, which is again, the reminder to the reader why you took the approach that you did, what you expected to find, and how well the results matched your expectations. All right, so I threw this in. We talked about this in the last presentation, but this is very, very important. Citations, bibliographies, and/or references. So you need to make sure to cite all references in the body of the paper and in the bibliography. So what that means is anything that you need, that you were using, anybody's work that you're using to justify your points, you must cite who wrote it and the year that it was written in. That's in the body of the paper. So if you want to tell me XYZ, this is what you think happened, you need to then turn around and substantiate it with a citation. So in red, do not cite works that are not part of your thesis. All right, because sometimes what happens is you've gone through some journals and you think that you have actually, you're going to use this and you haven't, and it may end up in the bibliography. That can't work. Only cite the works that you actually use in your thesis. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about bibliography. So here, this is where you're going to put the full citation. You can find an example of this is the American Psychological Association, or what we call APA. Now, there are different formats, so you're going to have to find out which format your instructor would like you to use, and please make sure to do so. Make sure they're in alphabetical order. So again, if you need a refresher, if you're not sure how to do this, I believe the last workshop on how to write a literature review it was recorded, and I believe it's up on the website for Shoco at Shoco Wellness. So please take a look at that because it's so important to cite your references. All right, so let's talk about research and planning. So understanding your assignment. So first things first, I really would like you all to make sure you have read your syllabus, you understand what your instructor wants you to do, and if not, please get clarification. Do not go any further. This is so important because I don't want you to waste your time, because writing a thesis is very time consuming. So the first things first, when is your deadline? The first step is to understand the scope of your assignment. Consider how long you have until your deadline and plan out an appropriate length of time to spend research, writing, and revision. Again, a thesis doesn't happen in a week. So please give yourself a lot of time, especially for the revision. That's very important. Okay, also, what word count are you aiming for? Consider your word count. How much can you cover in your research paper? Do you need to narrow down your ideas? And we'll talk about narrowing down your ideas a little later. What is the goal of the assignment? Take a close look at the instructions you've been given. So again, on your syllabus, and what is being asked of you. Again, if you're not clear, don't be afraid to go and talk to your instructor. And then what is your topic? Do you have to cover a specific topic or use a specific mode of analysis? Again, clarification from your instructor. So here's a little inverted triangle to figure out how to choose the topic. So this is how a good idea or a good way to narrow down your focus. So again, this was taken from the internet. So it's from the University of Southampton. Want to make sure that I cite them and let you all know I'm using their work. All right, so you may think, oh, I want to write a thesis on politics. Okay, so the theme is political science. Now get some context in there. So political engagement in the UK. And then you have to think of a topic. So could it be young people's attitudes towards politics? And then you have to start developing questions. And you can have many questions. Start developing a whole bunch and then narrow it down. So here's some questions. Should the voting age be lowered? Has Brexit how has Brexit impacted on young people? Are young people apathetic towards politics? Do young people feel like they have a voice in politics? These are all questions that you may be thinking about, or ideas that you may be thinking about. Start writing down your questions. All right. And in the end, this is what you may have come up with. To what extent did the referendum as to whether or not Britain should leave or stay in the EU have an impact upon young people's attitudes towards politics. So you see where all of the ideas are now in your thesis question. All right, so this is what you pretty much do. You start off with a big topic, and then you narrow it down. You keep going until you figure out what your research question is. You can also run that by your instructor to make sure you're on the right track before you even get going, because your whole thesis is going to pretty much be based on your thesis question. All right, so let's discuss this in a little bit more detail. So clearly define and narrow down your topic. If you're given a list of choices, consider which one seems the most intriguing to you, or which one you have the most to say about. So write about something that is familiar to you, or something that's really interesting to you, because writing a thesis about something you're not interested in is going to be like pulling teeth. So make sure that it's something that's, again, intriguing to you. If you have freedom to choose your own, consider what kinds of things were covered in the course. What are you curious to explore? So you've taken this course, so obviously I hope you're interested in the content of the course. So why not use some of the readings that you've already covered or you've already read to be part of your literature review, right? You're already familiar with the topic. So think about that, okay? And be curious. Try to pick a topic that is relevant, interesting, open to further research, and viable to explore within the scope of your assignment. All right, so we talked about primary versus secondary sources. I'm just going to run through this. Primary sources provide direct firsthand evidence. So letters, diaries, minutes, photographs, artifacts, interviews, and sound or video recordings. All right, so these, again, firsthand, not something that's summarized, not something that somebody wrote about. That's not their original information. Secondary sources provide commentary or analysis. So these comment on, interpret, or describe primary sources, academic books, so your textbooks, journal articles, reviews, essays, and textbooks. So there's one thing I want to say, and I'm sure I'm going to say this again. I want to talk about journal articles for a minute. Make sure to find peer-reviewed journal articles, and I'll show you I'll give you an example where to find them. So peer-reviewed journal article means other experts in the field have read this article and have said, yep, this is good, we approve of this, we're giving our approval. So again, these are articles that have been published, and peers, people in that industry or that field, have read the article and have said, yes, this is good information. Okay, so I have this in red. Use your critical thinking skills. So what does this mean, in case you're not sure? So I want you to think about what you're reading. And I say this a lot. I tell my students, when you're watching TV, for example, and let's say you're watching news, and it's from a certain broadcaster that leans maybe, and again, I'm talking about the States, leads maybe more Democratic or maybe leads more Republican. Think about what their agenda is. Who is supplying the information? Who are they interviewing, right? So I want you to do the same thing with regards to your paper. When you're reading your information or getting video information from your recordings, what do they have an agenda? What is the agenda? Is this something that is really going to be worthwhile to write about in your paper? And if so, make sure to let the readers know that this was taken from, maybe some a source that leans one way or another way, right? But if you write, and I know I'm going off a little topic here, but if you write something from again, from one extreme, try to balance it off with another extreme, because your thesis is not supposed to be biased. It's supposed to tell the reader, it's supposed to give the reader accurate information, not your point of view, not someone else's point of view, but accurate information, so facts. All right. So evaluating the GRAP test. So currency, is the information up to date? Very important. You do not want to cite old information because there may be really good new information. Is it relevant to your research? So make sure whatever you are using to substantiate your research actually is relevant to your topic. So where is it published and who is the author? So that's exactly what I was just talking about. Use your critical thinking cap. Where does the information come from? Is evidence provided? So that's also part of what I was just talking about. And the purpose. Why was this information published? Who is the publisher? So again, did they have an agenda? If so, you need to probably find something else that's peer reviewed. All right, so formulating a thesis statement. So this states your central argument. It establishes the purpose of the thesis, okay? It should be concise and coherent. Summarize your argument into 1 or 2 sentences. I know that's difficult, but that's what a thesis statement is about. So it guides your argument. So it gives a clear picture of your paper's ideas and directions. So here's an example of a thesis statement. So here's a bad one. Everyone should exercise. That doesn't really say much. So here's a good one. Rubens should add exercise to their daily morning routine because it not only keeps their bodies at a healthy weight, but also reduces the risk of high blood pressure. So again, the first one was too broad. The second one is actually telling the reader what your thesis is about. And then your thesis has to be about this and nothing else. So you're not going to talk about anything but what you've written in your thesis statement. Here's another example. High levels of alcohol consumption are bad for you. Again, too general. We've got to break it down. Think about that inverted triangle. Good. High levels of alcohol consumption have detrimental effects on your personal health, such as weight gain, heart disease, and liver complications. So the reader knows, okay, they're going to be talking about these topics, weight gain, heart disease, and liver complications, and what how alcohol affects all of these. So again, you've got to stick to what your thesis statement is all about. If you find that your research is taking you somewhere else, and that research, you find that more interesting, then you've got to come back to your thesis question and your statement and rewrite it. And that's happened. That has happened. So outlining your structure, very important. So this is where I need you to either create a file on your computer, get a book and designate that to your outline and also to all pertinent information that you find. So let's keep going. I'll tell you what I mean. So organize your thoughts and make an outline. An outline is a list of pretty much what you're going to write about. Understand the flow of information and how ideas are related. Ensure nothing is forgotten. So let me go back to that. So when I talk about understanding the flow of information and how ideas are related, initially, and I've got a mind map at the bottom there. So you can take a look at that, and that actually is a good idea, a good image of what may be going on in your head. I know that's what was going on in mine. So I had a whole bunch of ideas. I started writing things down, and then I started to, then I decided how the flow was going to happen. So what's going to happen after this, after this, after that. Now keep in mind, it has to be you're thinking of your your thesis, right? So your introduction, the body, your conclusion, your methods. So you probably want to organize your thoughts on and your information and the flow of information the same way on your outline. All right. Try to make sure nothing's forgotten. I know that's hard because typically something always is, but you can always go back and add it. All right. So let's talk about doing the research. All right, so I mentioned to you that I was going to explain to you where you can find research. So start exploring the literature on your topic through search engines. So search engines are what your are what you can find, are what you use to find information. This can be books, journal articles, newspapers, excuse me. And these are the search engines. So EBSCO is pretty general. JSTOR is pretty general. Medline is for medicine. And there's a whole bunch. So you can actually speak to your librarian. You can refer to the past presentation that I did a couple of weeks ago on how to write a literature review. It's more detailed. And that's where you will find academic information. Okay. All right. Use books, journals, and other reliable sources. We talked about peer-reviewed articles and books. So you really want to make sure that these are very academic. You don't want to use something that is deemed not academic. Okay, consider a variety of perspectives. We talked about that. Use your reading to inform your arguments. So you're going to be reading a lot of information. You're not going to just go through a couple of journal articles and a couple of books and write your thesis. So another thing that I'm going to bring up is, again, make sure you have time to do all this reading. And a good way of doing that is to go to the abstracts, look at the abstracts and see, because the abstracts is going to tell you what it's all about. So you're going to look at them and say, this may actually work, or it may not. Or some parts of this journal article or book may work. So you can pull that information out, but it's going to take a long time. So make sure you have time to do that. And again, use your reading to inform your arguments. So whatever you state, you've got to have something to substantiate your argument. So you cannot just blindly make a statement and keep writing. That's not how a thesis works. Okay, so this is what I was talking about again, about that book or your file. It is utterly important to keep notes of source details and useful quotations, because you are going to have so much information to pull from. You don't want to have to read them. You put them aside and go back. You want to actually read it and say, oh, I can use this information. I'm going to write down, I'm going to make notes. I'm going to put the source, I'm going to put the dates, I'm going to put the page number. So when you come back to write your thesis, you have all that information, and that is going to keep you organized, because again, there's nothing like reading stuff, putting them aside, now you're ready to write, and you've got to go through all that stuff again. That's just wasting time. Okay, in red, do not use Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not an academic source. Wikipedia is information that people kind of throw in there. Sometimes it's accurate, but we're not sure. So do not use Wikipedia. It is not accepted in the academic world. All right, writing. So writing the introduction. What is your paper about? Introduce the topic along with key terms and ideas. Why is your paper worthwhile? Tell the reader what new insights you will offer, and why it is important. How will you make your arguments? So give an idea about the structure of the paper, refer to gaps or contradictions in the existing research, and what makes your paper unique. So again, you've already gone through all the information, so you know where the gaps are. So this is a good place to put it in, because again, your introduction is telling the reader what they're going to be reading about. All right, so writing the body. All right, several paragraphs or sections. So each covers a specific idea, all connecting to form your overall argument. And I'll tell you, when I was writing my thesis, I had to move paragraphs around because I was writing as I was putting I had the information together, I would write it. When I was reviewing, I realized that it didn't flow, and you want your ideas to build from your paragraphs, right? So you want to start off and then keep going, get a little bit more detail. So make sure it's covering, the paragraph covers one idea, all connecting to form your argument. All right, each paragraph section covers one idea. Just information presented in a logical order that serves your argument. And again, this may not happen on your first or second draft. It contains all your evidence and arguments. So everything you've written, everything that you suggest is in the body of your paper. All right, so let's talk about your paragraph structure. So again, follow the outline. Keep your thesis statement in mind. And if you need to write it and put it up on your wall so you can keep looking at it to keep you in check, please do so. Do whatever you need to keep you focused on this thesis and not start getting information and writing information that doesn't pertain to it. Use topic sentences. So this is really important. So topic sentences appears as the first sentence of the paragraph and serves to concisely introduce that paragraph's topic. And that will also keep you in line, focused on that paragraph. Make effective transitions. So use words like because, however, first, to signal the relationship between different sentences and paragraphs. Okay? So again, remember, one paragraph, one idea. So I found this online. I thought it was really funny. So I thought I'd throw this in here because I know this is heavy stuff, what we're talking about. So paragraph structure. So the top of the bun is your topic sentence. Your lettuce is your first supporting detail. Your tomatoes, I hope you like all this stuff on your hamburgers, by the way. Your tomatoes, your second supporting detail. The meat and cheese are your third supporting detail. And then the bottom bun is your concluding sentence, right? So each paragraph has a concluding sentence, okay? So writing the conclusion. So when you're writing your conclusion, you're actually writing about everything you have written about, okay? So no new arguments or evidence. Summarize your argument and central point. Reflect on the limitations, again, the gaps. Maybe you didn't find enough information. Maybe you did find information, but you didn't find enough information. So summarize that. Suggest areas for further research. Maybe you may have additional ideas. Put them in here. This is where you will write this stuff in your conclusion. So again, the first draft. So that will turn your preliminary ideas into your arguments. It will maintain forward momentum right now, perfect later. And again, your outline is also part of this. If you have perfected your outline, this will help you to write your first draft, and it will keep you, again, focused. Express yourself clearly. Be prepared to be flexible, to make adjustments to your planned arguments or structure as you write. Again, as I mentioned, you may find information that you find really important or really interesting that you weren't thinking about. So again, you want to put that into your thesis. So again, you may have to make adjustments to what your thesis statement is. That happened to me. I thought I was going to write about something else, and then I went and I started doing all the research, and I thought, maybe I want to write about this topic instead. Cite your sources. Again, if you don't cite your sources, that can be considered as plagiarism. So please cite your sources. All right, the revision part. So the steps to revising a paper. Evaluate your paper. So when I talk about evaluating your paper, look at this paper and say, is this what I wanted to write? Is this good enough? Do I need more information? So were my methods, were my methods proper? Were they biased? So make sure you evaluate this paper before you actually write it. And you may have to go back and rewrite. So redrafting, reworking, edit your paper. So proofreading. So it's a good idea to have somebody else proofread your paper because a lot of the times we write the way we speak. And again, this is an academic paper, so you want somebody else to read this. You can proofread it too. What I suggest is you wait a couple of days. So again, you have to have a lot of time to write this thesis and then go back to it. And typically you find a lot of grammatical errors. You may have to edit, but as I said, a good idea is to have somebody else read it. All right, so evaluating the first draft. Does it line up with your vision of your paper? Is there anything missing? And the thing is, a lot of the times the reader may see that there's something missing. So if there's something missing, you need to figure that out and make sure to add it to your paper. Is everything clear? Are there any confusing or ambiguous passages? Would a different structure work better? Should anything be cut? I know I've cut paragraphs and paragraphs when I was writing. So think about that. I know you may have put a lot of sweat and tears into your thesis by now, but again, some paragraphs after you read it or the reader has proofread it has said, this doesn't make any sense or this doesn't pertain to your central argument. So you may have to cut it. Is there anything in the paper that's redundant or irrelevant? So if you have repeated yourself, make sure to cut that. All right, so editing. Fix your grammatical errors. Improve your sentence structure. So make sure it's concise. Make sure it's not a run-on sentence. Each sentence should convey one idea. Clarify ambiguities. Remove redundancies, avoid repetition. And I know we spoke about proofreading. Again, you and the person or people that you have reading can also help you with this. If you're using Microsoft Word, of course, you're going to know what your spelling errors are. Missing words, confused word choices. So there are times where I'm writing something and I find that I'm using this word too much, or the word doesn't convey what I'm trying to say. I just click on the word. I use the thesaurus in Microsoft Word, and that gives me more word choices because you don't want to keep repeating the same words all the time. Check out your punctuation errors, missing or excess spaces, stylistic consistency, so capitalization, formatting, referencing. Remember, we talked about about the referencing especially, but make sure you use capitalizations when need to. Make sure that your format, your paragraph is formatted the way we discussed. And of course, your thesis is formatted the way your outline is supposed to be. Check your citations. All right, so you've got this. You actually got this. You've got all the information now to write your thesis. This is being recorded, so you can always go back and look at the information. I know it's a lot of information in a short time, I really hope that this helped you. And I really want to thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. So thank you again.